The truck's odometer is the only thing in my life I still trust completely. And even that I've started to double check. I've worked for the County Highway Maintenance Division for 19 years. Sign crew, mostly. People don't think about us, and that's exactly how it should be. If we're doing our jobs right, you drive past 100 of our signs a day and never once wonder who put them there or who keeps them straight. We're the reason you know the curve is coming before you see it. We're the reason the speed limit is legible at night. It's not glamorous work, but it's honest. And for most of those 19 years, it made sense to me in a way almost nothing else did. Let me explain how a sign gets replaced, because you need to understand the routine before I can make you understand how wrong it went. Everything starts with a work order. A sign gets reported down, faded, bent, hit by a car, whatever. That report goes into the system, gets assigned a number, and lands in our morning queue. Each order has a location, a sign type, an install code, and a reference to the roadway inventory. We load the trucks based on the queue. We drive out, we do the work, we photograph the finished install, and we close the order with a timestamp and a GPS ping. That ping matters. It's how the county proves the work was done, and it's how they pay us. No ping, no closeout, no record. The system is old and clunky, and I could complain about it for an hour, but it works. It's supposed to be impossible to fake. The road in question is County Route 9, or it was. Everybody who worked out of our yard called it the Ridge Cut because it ran up through a notch in the hills on the north edge of the county, connecting two farm valleys that otherwise would have meant a 40-minute detour around the base of the ridge. It was a bad road. Steep grade, no shoulder, blind curves stacked one on top of another, and a section near the top where the county had never been able to keep the hillside from sliding down onto the pavement in the spring. For decades it was more trouble than it was worth, but people used it because it saved them time, and time is the one thing nobody thinks they have enough of. Route 9 was closed for good in the spring of 2019, permanently. There'd been a slide that took out about 80 feet of the roadbed, and the engineering estimate to rebuild it with proper retaining walls came back at a number the county was never going to spend on a road that served maybe 200 vehicles a day. So they decommissioned it. Barricades went up at both ends. Type 3 barricades, the big striped ones, with closed signs and a supplemental panel reading, "Road closed to through traffic." Then the reflective route markers came down, the road came off the active inventory, and Route 9 stopped existing as far as the county was concerned. I know because I was on the crew that pulled the markers. I unbolted the shield sign at the south end myself. I remember it because it was a cold morning for spring, and my hands went numb on the ratchet. That was 6 years ago. The first time I saw the work order, I almost didn't register it. It was a Tuesday in October, and I was sorting the queue while my partner Danny loaded the truck. The order was routine on its face. Replace one route marker, standard shield, install at a specific mile point. But the roadway reference was CR9, County Route 9. I read it twice, then I pulled it out of the stack and set it aside, because obviously it was a mistake. Somebody had entered an old location, or the system had coughed up a ghost record from before the decommission. It happens. The database is a patchwork of 30 years of different software, and things surface sometimes that shouldn't. I told Danny about it, and he shrugged. Danny's 26, and he wasn't around for the closure. To him, Route 9 was just a line on the old maps and a couple of barricades you could see from the highway if you knew where to look. "Kick it back to dispatch," he said. So I did. I flagged the order as invalid, noted that the route was decommissioned in 2019, and sent it back up the chain. That should have been the end of it. It came back the next morning. Same order, same location, same install code, reactivated and pushed back into our queue with a note from the dispatch supervisor. "Confirmed valid. Please complete." I called dispatch. I got a woman named Pam who I'd talked to 100 times over the years, and I told her the road didn't exist anymore, that I'd personally taken the signs down. She was quiet for a second, And then she said the order was showing as generated by the roadway inventory system, automatically, off a routine integrity scan. The system had flagged that Route 9 was missing a required route marker at that mile point, and it had generated a work order to correct the deficiency. I said the road was closed. She said, "I know, hun, but the system says it's active." And there was something in the way she said it, a little apologetic, a little tired, that I didn't think about at the time but that I think about now. She'd seen it before. I'm almost sure of that. She'd seen it before, and she'd learned not to push. Here's the thing that I want to be honest about, because it matters. I could have refused. I had the authority to reject a work order I believed was generated in error. But I'd been doing this job for 19 years, and I had never once seen the point in fighting the system over paperwork. The path of least resistance was to drive up there, confirm the road was closed, photograph the barricade, and close the order with a note that no install was possible. That's what a competent person does. You document reality and you let the record catch up. So that's what I decided to do. We drove up the ridge-cut road that afternoon. The south barricade was right where it should have been, faded now, the reflective sheeting on the closed sign gone chalky and dull, weeds grown up around the base of it. I felt a small, stupid sense of relief. Everything was as it should be. I got out, took my photos, and started drafting the closeout note. Then Danny said, "Hey, somebody's been up here." He was pointing at the ground beside the barricade. There were tire tracks in the mud, where the shoulder had eroded, fresh ones, cutting around the end of the barricade and continuing up the closed road. And the barricade itself, when I looked closely, had been moved. Not by much. But the base of it sat in a shallow depression in the dirt, and the depression didn't line up with where the base was now. Somebody had shifted it aside and put it back, and they'd done it more than once, because there were two depressions, overlapping. I want to tell you I turned around and left. Any reasonable person would say that's what I should have done, but I had a work order that referenced a mile point half a mile up that road, and I had tire tracks going exactly that direction, and the part of my brain that has spent 19 years chasing down discrepancies simply would not let it go. If somebody was driving on a closed county road, that was a liability issue, and it was arguably my job to document it. So we moved the barricade aside, and we drove up the ridge cut. The road was in bad shape, but passable for the first stretch. Cracks, weeds pushing through the pavement, a scatter of rockfall we had to steer around. We came around the second big curve, and there, at the exact mile point on the work order, was a signpost. It was a standard county route marker post, galvanized steel, set in concrete, the way we set them. And it was empty. The bolts were there, the mounting holes were there, but the shield sign itself was gone. Just an empty post standing at the edge of a road that hadn't legally existed for 6 years, waiting for a sign. I checked the post number stamped near the base against the work order. They matched. This was the install location. Somebody had put this post in the ground, and the system knew about it, and the system wanted a sign on it. Now, a post like that doesn't grow out of the ground. Somebody installs it. It takes a truck, an auger, concrete, and about 2 hours of work. And when we install a post, we log it, with a photo and a GPS ping, same as everything else. So I did the thing I should have done from the start, which was pull the full history on that post number. I had the tablet with me. I pulled the record. The post had a full install history, set in 2003, when the route was upgraded. And then, underneath, a maintenance log. Sign replaced 2007. Sign replaced 2011. Sign replaced 2016. Sign replaced 2019. Sign replaced 2021. Sign replaced 2023. Sign replaced 2024. Every few years, like clockwork, a shield sign replaced on a post, on a road that had been dead since 2019. And every single one of those closeout records had a photo attached, and a GPS ping, and a crew signature. I opened the most recent one, from the previous year. The photo showed the post with a fresh green route shield bolted to it, reading 9, gleaming, brand new. The GPS ping placed it right where I was standing, and the crew signature on the closeout was mine. I had no memory of it, none. I had not driven up this road since 2019. I would have remembered, and yet there was my signature, my employee number, a timestamp from a Thursday in April of last year, and a note in what I can only describe as my own writing style. Install complete. Post secure. Old sign removed and disposed per protocol. I stood there for a long time. Danny was talking, but I wasn't hearing him. Because the thing that scared me wasn't a ghost or a noise in the trees. The thing that scared me was that the record was perfect. It was more perfect than my own memory. If you'd shown that closeout to my supervisor, to the county, to a court, they'd have believed the record over me every time, because the record had a photo and a ping and my signature, and I had nothing but a feeling that I hadn't been there. We drove back down. I put the barricade back exactly where it had been sitting. And that night I did something I'd never done in 19 years. I went home and I pulled up the old paper archives the county keeps in a shared drive, the scanned documents from before everything went digital, and I started cross-referencing the sign replacement dates against the crew schedules. Here's what I found. Every one of those sign replaced dates lined up with a real workday. On each of those days, a crew had gone out and closed a real work order somewhere in the county, but not on Route 9. On the 2019 date, for example, my crew had replaced a stop sign 11 miles away, in the town of Halbrook, and I had the closeout for that too, with its own photo and its own ping. Somehow, both closeouts existed. Same crew, same day, 2 different locations, and one of them was a road that didn't exist. The days didn't overlap in a way I could prove was impossible. That was the maddening part. The Route 9 closeouts were always time-stamped early in the morning, before the shift officially started, or during the lunch window, or right at the end of the day. They fit into the gaps. Whatever was generating those records was careful. It filled in the spaces where nobody would notice, and it used real crews and real signatures and real GPS coordinates. And it built a history so consistent that it had become, in every way that the county could measure, the truth. I stayed up until 2 in the morning, going backward through the records. And the further back I went, the worse it got. Because the Route 9 sign replacements didn't start in 2019, when the road closed. They went back to 2007. But before 2019, they were normal. They were real maintenance on a real road. The pattern didn't change at the closure. The system just kept going. The same rhythm, the same every few years replacement. As if the road being decommissioned was a paperwork event that the road itself simply declined to acknowledge. The next morning I went to see my supervisor, a man named Ron who'd been in the division even longer than me. I laid it out as plainly as I could. The work order, the empty post, the closeout with my signature, the barricade that kept getting moved. I expected him to tell me it was a database error, to laugh it off, to send it to IT. Instead, he got very still, and he closed his office door, and he said, "Just put the sign up." I said I didn't understand. He said, "The system wants a sign on that post. So put a sign on the post, close the order, and let it go. That's all. It's the easiest thing in the world." I asked him how long he'd known. He looked at me for a while. Then he said, "You pulled the markers in 2019. You remember that morning?" I said I did. He said, "You remember there were 2 of you on that crew?" And I did. There'd been me and a man named Carl Whitmore, who retired the following year. Older guy, quiet, close to the end of his time. I hadn't thought about Carl in years. Ron said, "Carl told me, before he left, that he'd been putting a sign up on that road every couple of years since before I got here. He said an old-timer named Bishop showed him how, back in the 80s, and Bishop learned it from somebody before him. It's not in any manual. It gets passed down. You put the sign up, you close the order, And you don't ask what the sign is for. Carl figured you'd take it over when he left. I guess he never got around to telling you. I asked him what happens if you don't. Ron didn't answer that directly. What he said was, the last time somebody decided to be principled about it was before your time. 68, I think, maybe 69. There was a foreman who refused to keep doing it because it wasn't a real road anymore. Said he wasn't going to have his crew wasting county time on ghost work. He struck it from the schedule. Ron paused. That's the year the buses stopped. I asked him what that meant. He said there used to be a school bus route that ran a loop up through the valleys, and part of the loop went over the ridge cut. He said that in the fall of 1969, on a morning with fog, a bus went up the ridge cut road and didn't come down. He said there were 11 kids on it, and the driver, and none of them were ever found, and the official story was that the bus went off the road in the fog at the top, where the shoulder gave out, and that the wreck went down into the ravine, where the brush was too thick and the terrain too steep to ever recover it. He said they searched for weeks. He said the parents never accepted it, and he said that after that the sign went back up on Route 9, and it never came down again until 2019, and every crew that ever worked that road understood, without anybody quite saying it, that the sign stayed up. That was the job. Keep the sign up. I asked him what a route marker sign had to do with a bus that crashed 50 years ago. He said, a route marker tells you the road is real. It tells you the road goes somewhere. You take the sign down, you're telling the road it doesn't exist anymore. And I don't think that road likes being told it doesn't exist. I think when there's no sign, it goes looking for proof that it's still a road. It goes looking for traffic. He looked at his hands. The tire tracks you found. Somebody drove up there. You want to tell me who? I didn't have an answer. He said, put the sign up. I'd like to say I refused. I'd like to say I'm the kind of person who hears a story like that and dismisses it as the superstition of tired old men who spent too many years alone on empty roads. But I'd seen the closeout with my signature on it. I'd seen the depressions in the mud where the barricade kept getting moved by somebody, or something, that wanted the road open. And I am, at bottom, a practical man. If putting a sign on a post makes the problem go away, you put the sign on the post. You don't need to understand the plumbing to know you shouldn't leave the tap running. So the next day, Danny and I loaded a standard route shield onto the truck, and we drove up the ridge cut, and we moved the barricade, and we bolted the sign to the empty post. It took 20 minutes. I photographed it, I closed the order, and I felt the GPS ping register in the system, and I watched the work order flip to closed, with a timestamp and my signature, and I told myself that was the end of it. It was quiet up there. That's what I remember most. No wind, no birds. Danny didn't say much either. On the way back down, he finally asked me what the deal was, why we were maintaining a sign on a closed road, and I told him it was a records thing. The system needed it closed out. Don't worry about it. He accepted that. He's a good kid. He trusts the system the way I used to. That should have been where it ended, but I couldn't leave it alone, because Ron had told me a story, and stories can be checked. So over the next few weeks I did some digging on my own time. I found the newspaper archives from 1969. I found the accounts of the bus that went up the ridge cut in the fog and didn't come down. 11 children. The driver's name was Alton Reese. The article had a photograph of the bus from a school event earlier that year, and a list of the missing. And here's where I have to tell you the part that I've never told anyone, the part that makes me not want to close my eyes at night. I recognized one of the names on the list, not from 1969, from the closeout records. When you close a work order in our system, it logs the crew. And on some of those old Route 9 sign replacement records, going back through the years, there were second names on the crew that I didn't recognize as any employee I'd ever worked with. I'd assumed they were people from before my time, retirees, names from the 70s and 80s. But one of them, appearing on a closeout from 1988, was a name off that 1969 list. A child who would have been maybe 9 years old when the bus went up the road. Listed, 20 years later, as a member of a county sign crew, signing off on a sign replacement on the road where he disappeared. I told myself it was a coincidence. Common name, data entry error. I told myself a lot of things, but I went back through every Route 9 closeout I could find, all the way back, and I found more of them. Not on every record, just some, scattered through the decades. Names from that 1969 list showing up as crew members on the ghost road, always paired with a real employee, always on the closeouts nobody ever looked at twice. As if the road, every few years, needed the sign replaced, and it sent someone who knew the road to help do it. Someone who'd never left. The one from last year's closeout, the one with my signature. There was a second name on that crew too. I hadn't noticed it the first time because I'd been too fixated on my own signature. The second name was Alton Reese, the bus driver. I don't fully understand what's happening on that road. I've made peace with the fact that I probably never will. But I've put together a working theory, the way you put together a theory about anything you can't fix but have to live with. The road wants to be a road. A road is defined by the fact that it goes somewhere and that people travel it. When the county took the sign down in 2019, they didn't close the road. They just told it that it wasn't a road anymore. And the road disagreed. Somewhere up in that notch in the hills, on foggy mornings, there is still a route that carries traffic that never arrives, and it needs the world to keep agreeing that it exists. The sign is the agreement. The sign is the whole thing. As long as there's a route marker on that post, the road is a road, officially, on paper, in the system, and it doesn't need to go looking for anyone to prove it. It has the proof. It has the sign. But when the sign comes down, the road starts looking for proof another way. It moves the barricade. It makes tracks. It generates a work order because it knows the system. It's been part of the system for 50 years, longer. And it knows that a work order will bring a crew up the road, and a crew is traffic, and traffic is proof. And if the crew replaces the sign, the road is satisfied, and everyone goes home. And if the crew doesn't, the road keeps looking. I keep the sign up now. It's my job. Ron retired last spring, and before he left, in a quiet moment, I told him I understood, and he shook my hand and looked relieved in a way I'll never forget, like a man setting down a weight he'd carried up a long grade. He didn't have to explain who I was supposed to tell when my own time came. I already knew. Danny. It'll be Danny. He's the one who was in the truck with me. He's the one the road has already seen. I haven't told him yet. I keep meaning to, and I keep not doing it, because once I tell him he can't unknow it, and I remember what it was like to be him, to trust the system, to drive past 100 signs a day and never wonder who keeps them straight or why. I'm going to give him a little more of that. He'll have the job soon enough. The sign is due to be replaced again in about 18 months, if the pattern holds. I'll get the work order some morning, generated automatically off an integrity scan, flagged valid, pushed to my queue, and I'll load a route shield onto the truck, and I'll drive up the ridge cut, and I'll move the barricade, and I'll bolt the sign to the post. I've thought a lot about what would happen if I just kept driving, past the sign, up to the top, to the place where the shoulder gives out and the road ends in 80 feet of empty air over a ravine. I've thought about what it would be like on a foggy morning, when you can't see the gap, when the road looks like it keeps going, when there's a bus somewhere up ahead of you in the mist that's been trying to finish its route for 50 years. I've thought about whether the road would take that as proof, finally, of the kind it's really looking for. A vehicle that goes up and doesn't come down. Traffic that arrives. I don't do it. I put the sign up and I go home. That's the whole job. Keep the sign up and never, ever drive to the top. But I'll tell you the thing that keeps me awake. The thing I can't get past no matter how many times I turn it over. Last year's closeout had my signature on it, and I have no memory of ever being on that road. Which means one of two things. Either something in that system is very good at forging me, or, one morning, on a road I don't remember driving. I already went up to the top with Alton Reese, and I came back down, and I don't remember that either. And the only proof I have that I'm still the one keeping the sign up, and not the road wearing my name on a closeout, is my own memory. And my memory is the one thing up there I've learned I can't trust at all.